Hi guys, welcome to Nesting with JYK, and this is just me rambling, so it may not be very useful. Yeah, uh, we all know there's been some issues with essentially Iran, and a bunch of people died and all that. So I was just thinking how one can deduce the actual extent of this outbreak in Iran from other data. Because we all know that if you look at this thing, let's just take a look. Let's go to Iran. Oh, by the way, this worldometer seems to be very up to date, and you can even see graphs of individual countries. So that's quite useful, and you can turn it into logarithmic. Very useful website. So just in case. If you look at Iran, they report something like it doesn't even seem they're growing very fast. It seems like they're under control. There's a clear change in gradient on the logarithmic scale where they kind of slow down. So it's all good signs, but there's no way I'm going to trust this number. I've been meaning to actually look at their data for a while now. Today I saw this news from CNN, and so that kind of prompted me to take a look at the situation. Hard, so the Chinese number are fake. Um, then how do you make sense of all this, and how do you actually come to a order of magnitude correct number, right? So one thing I realized, obviously, there are a bunch of sorry, this is the Qualms Cemetery, where I think the main difference is between those, like, to the right is March 1st, to the left is October 29th. We don't actually know how fast these things are building. You can probably look back at historical images and see, what is a normal progression of these graves being built, and then compare to like the current, like compare the projection versus the additional space taken by these graves. That's one thing, but that's kind of difficult. So let's find something that's easier. We have this thing from 5th, I think, 3rd. So that's 11 days ago. And 23 MPs got infected. So now the question becomes how many? Well, according to The Guardian, which I think still has a bit of credibility left, more or less, that's 8% of Iran's MPs. So what is significant about the MPs? Because they probably get tested regularly, or they should have been. And what may have happened is, like, they haven't done any testing, and after a while they're like, oh, let's test our MPs, and then they did that, and they found out 8% were infected. Is there a reason to expect the MPs to be more likely to contract this virus? I don't know. But there is no particular reason to say they are, I would say, and also they probably are better. They probably had better nutrition and all that. So yeah. So if you just look at Iran population, right? Population of 81 million. That's 2017. They probably had a bit more now. 2020 is 83 million. So 83 million multiplied by 0.08, so 6 million infected if the sample is representative of the whole population. And so 6 million, and what they're reporting? They're reporting something like, 12,000. That's only a factor of close to 2 orders of magnitude out, which I kind of don't don't find too surprising. We'll look at the China situation as well, like trying to make sense of that. And okay, so well, that's one data point. The other data point comes from China. So China returned 313 people from Iran in, well, earlier this month, and 11 out of those a have the virus. So 11 divided by 311 gives you 3.5%, and you multiply that by 83 million, you end up with 3 million. Again, we don't have better data to work from, so this is the best guess we can have. I guess it was, I mean, the Chinese are clearly more, there's two ways to, the Chinese sample is going to be different, right? One is this virus originated from in China, so the Chinese are more likely to interact with the Chinese. So they are more likely to catch it. But at the same time, the Chinese are the first to wear masks, and they don't particularly stigmatize against mask wearing, and that might reduce their chance of infection. So yeah, so I guess Iran, we're looking at between 1 to 10 million infected. You may say, oh, that's a huge range, but that's not actually that big of a range, because if you look at this this curve, uh, 1 million and 10 million is just going to be, one order of magnitude, and then that's only a difference of what? About 10 days, 11 days. But assuming this data is collected under the same, collection method. If you look at Italy, that's probably more reliable. At least I trust the Italians more than I trust the Iranians. So you got end up with 828. So and here you got March 10th. So 10 days is what it takes for this thing to go an order of magnitude up. So Iran, I don't know how well they're putting military on the streets now. So I guess people are staying at home and all that. So yeah, but man, the fact that they were licking whatever stuff they were licking. I think they were. I don't know if it's true, right? But the rumors they're licking these poles and stuff. It's like, oh, I'm gonna take in the virus myself and protect others. I'm like, what the f? But yeah, so that's Iran. And also the other thing that went against Iran, well, here's my political issue with Iran, really. There was a Chinese woman in Iran that had a bunch of masks, and then her neighbor, Chinese woman, had something like her neighbor reported her for hoarding masks or something. Uh, where are we? And then she had something like 500,000 masks. Let me see. Uh, uh, let's see if we can find anything. Oh yes, this guy. So the guy had the woman had and her Iranian husband had 500,000 masks, and we don't know whether they got it within Iran or they just got it somewhere. We can't really tell, right? But they had a bunch, and so they were now taken down. I guess they got arrested, or their masks were taken away. I mean, hoarding is kind of bad, but I would say, like, if you want to attract masks from other parts of the world to where you are, but I guess that doesn't happen in Iran. You can only get it from China, maybe because everybody's having some kind of sanction, especially the US have some kind of sanction against Iran. So, but again, this doesn't help. Like why? So just because of this news, like that's the last place that I'm gonna spend energy to arrange shipments of anything to, simply because I don't even know if if I'll be able to make a profit or even recoup whatever inventory I have to build up and all that. So yeah, so that doesn't help. All right, so done with Iran, and I was gonna go talk about China number of Chinese deaths, but uh, don't really feel like doing that now. I should get back to work. But if you look at China, there's no way only 3,000 died, because 3,000 dead. Let's look at the cumulative case, right? Daily new death, right? The top new death is 146 according to this chart. And that's nothing. 150 deaths in a city, well, that's across entire China, but in a city like Wuhan, that doesn't register much. How do we come to that? So Wuhan, you can look at the death rate, right? The death rate is I think I talked about this before. In 2000, well, something like 0.5%, 100, and then divide by that by days, right? So that's per year. So you got that. Then you put 4 zeros after that. Multiply by 0.00551. So 60,000 would die naturally without anything. So normally you end up with 166 dead in Wuhan alone. So if this number was to be trusted, then you should end up with just double the capacity, right? So if you end with double the number of dead in the worst day across entire China. So let's assume 80% that's from Wuhan. Well, that's gonna be something like 80% of that is 120. It's not even double the capacity. And then we all know that there's a lot of slack in this funeral business, because typically they don't run at full capacity and people take time off during the nights. You work for 8 hours normally. So you should be able to handle 3 times that. And they couldn't. They had to send people in from outside Wuhan to these funeral homes. And they have to put in mobile cremators. Yeah, they have to send in mobile cremators. So the number should be close to like 1,000 dead per day rather than 120 in Wuhan. So if you have 1,000 dead per day and the peak was something around like February, beginning of like February, you should be looking at, I don't know, 30,000 in Wuhan alone or something. Yeah, so that number is clearly bogus. And in terms of infection rate, um, the population that was infected, I think I talked about that as well in a previous video. There was a guy that said much higher, something like they measured the infection rate of ritonavir in like number of infected COVID-19 infected patients among those who take ritonavir, which is like an AIDS drug, and that turned out to be like 1% or 2%, and he said that's much lower than the general population. When much lower, what does that mean? That at least 4x, right? If it's 4x, then you're looking at 400,000 infected within Wuhan alone, because Wuhan has 11 million people, and then 11 million multiplied by 4% ends up, you're talking about some ridiculously high numbers, orders of magnitude higher than, like I'm talking about Wuhan alone, than the 80,000. All right, so that's all. That's all I have for today, and essentially I'm just trying to see how one can come up with their own numbers from circumstantial evidence rather than just relying on the official data. And then it might be useful in the future when you don't have accurate data and to see, to kind of cross map different kind of data and come to your own conclusion. That's